Let's get straight into it. There were three things on the kitchen counter: a cold cup of chamomile tea, an empty granola wrapper, and my resignation letter. She read the letter first. Her fingers trembled, not because I was leaving my job, but because she finally realized it wasn't just about the job. That letter was my way out. You don't think it'll be a letter that ends everything. You imagine shouting, crying, some big fight where plates crash and secrets spill. But no, just 12 printed lines in Times New Roman, signed at the bottom. That's what made Lorraine freeze for the first time since Curtis slithered into our life. Oh yeah, Curtis. If arrogance could grow legs and eat hummus straight from the container, it would be named Curtis. The kind of guy who brags about taking digital detoxes because he doesn't own a phone. My wife once said he was so present it made her feel seen. I guess I was too busy paying rent to be poetic. She said he was just a friend who needed a place to crash after getting kicked out of his third co-op housing unit. But then why did I hear his laughter at 11 p.m. through our bedroom door while I was on the couch? Why did I see his hoodie draped on her side of the bed? Why did she start calling me Wendell in that clipped tone that always came right before something cruel? I didn't confront her. Not then. I watched, collected pieces, waited for the moment she'd push just a little too far. That moment came on a Saturday morning. I walked into the kitchen wearing my old fleece robe. She was dancing barefoot, earbuds in, twirling like a teenager. She didn't see me, but he did. Curtis was standing there, shirtless, smug, holding the same mug I'd gotten her for our anniversary 2 years ago, the one that said, "Love you more." He winked at me. That was it. I walked back upstairs, opened my laptop, and wrote the cleanest, coldest resignation letter I've ever typed. Not just from my job, from being her plan B. I left it beside her tea. She still hadn't seen me. But when she did, her entire world cracked. The sound of her footsteps coming down the hallway that morning is something I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. Not because they were heavy or hurried. No, that would have made sense. They were light, almost casual, as if nothing had shifted, as if the walls weren't quietly giving up on us. She came into the kitchen, glanced at the mug, picked up the granola wrapper with one hand and the letter with the other. Her smile dropped like a curtain. For a second, she just stood there, lips parted, eyes scanning. I watched from the hallway, unseen. It was strange watching her read something I wrote not to explain myself, but to end myself, at least the version she had kept around for her convenience. When she finished, she didn't crumble. No, she blinked, once, twice, then walked barefoot back to the stairs. 10 minutes later, she knocked on the bathroom door, pretending like everything was normal. "Wendell, can we talk?" Her voice was sugar-dipped panic, the kind you reserve for realizing the backup plan just walked off the edge of the board. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I knew what came next. The sudden compliments. The kisses on the cheek. The forced, "remember when we," nostalgia. That evening, I came home to dinner on the table, her old lasagna recipe, candles, even my favorite beer. Curtis was nowhere to be seen. I didn't sit down. "You don't have to do this," she said, trying to smile, trying to mean it. But her eyes were pleading. "It's just been a weird time. He doesn't matter." It was a phase. A phase. Like Curtis was a haircut she regretted. I didn't yell. I just said, "You picked him every day for months. You just never thought I'd leave." She cried. I think part of her thought it would work. The tears. The old recipes. The desperation masked as effort. But I had already left the moment she called me predictable in front of him. I packed 2 bags, left the lasagna untouched, and drove to a motel on the edge of town. That night, she called me 9 times. I didn't answer once. The motel wasn't glamorous. Flickering lights in the hallway, thin towels, a vending machine that ate my quarters. But it gave me something I hadn't had in years: silence. No Curtis laughter echoing through my walls. No Lorraine pacing upstairs, pretending her phone wasn't blowing up with texts she didn't want me to see. Just me, stale air, and a hard mattress that didn't smell like betrayal. I thought she'd get the message. I thought the letter, the silence, the walking out, surely that was loud enough. But no. The next morning, I woke up to 12 texts. "Where are you? Can we please talk? This isn't like you." She didn't understand that not being like me was the entire point. I went for a walk that morning, no real destination, just letting the cold wind slap some reality into my face. Around noon, I walked past our favorite diner. Well, my favorite, apparently. And through the window, I saw her, Lorraine, sitting with her sister, Autumn, who was leaning across the table, clearly mid-lecture. Lorraine looked like someone who had just realized she'd bet everything on the wrong horse. I stood outside for a while, watched her talk with wild gestures, tears coming in waves. Autumn didn't look sympathetic. Good. That night, I got another surprise, an email. From Curtis. No subject line. No greeting. Just 5 words. You're really doing this, huh? I stared at that sentence for what felt like an hour. I didn't reply. He followed it up a few hours later with something longer. Something about how I was making things worse for everyone. That I was damaging Lorraine's mental space. And that he was just filling a gap I left behind. That phrase made me physically ill. Filling a gap? That's what I'd become. Some abandoned space she let a stray drift into. I closed the laptop and turned off the light. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there thinking how insane it is that someone can burn your world down, then call you the arsonist for walking away from the flames. But what really shook me was what came the next day, when someone else found out, and suddenly, Lorraine's web of lies began falling apart in front of people who used to believe her. It was my brother, Mason, who tore the whole thing wide open. Of all people, it had to be him. He's the type who doesn't get involved unless something's on fire, and even then, he usually just hands you the extinguisher and walks away. But this time, he stepped directly into the smoke. Mason had always been skeptical of Lorraine. He never said it outright, but he'd raise one eyebrow every time she went off on some abstract tangent about needing more emotional range from me. He once joked that dating her was like hugging a cactus. Looks interesting until you get too close. We hadn't spoken much in recent months, but when I texted him from the motel and told him everything, he responded in less than 3 minutes with, "Where are you? I'm coming." I didn't even ask. He showed up with a backpack, 2 thermoses of black coffee, and an expression that could crack concrete. I told him the full story. No sugarcoating. The late nights. The cold shoulders. The day I saw Curtis in my bathrobe making eggs like he paid the mortgage. Mason didn't speak for a full minute. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something, and muttered, "She's been telling people you're unstable." My heart stopped. "Who?" I asked. "A few mutuals." Autumn told her boyfriend. Words getting around that you're emotionally unpredictable and lashing out since the work burnout. She's laying the groundwork. That sentence hit harder than the cheating. Lorraine wasn't just trying to soften her guilt. She was rewriting the script where I was the villain. The overworked husband who couldn't meet her emotional needs. I was stunned, frozen, and then Mason did something I didn't expect. He opened his group chat with our extended family, the one Lorraine was in, and typed out a message so brutally simple it felt like a punch. "Since Lorraine's been talking, I thought we should all know why Wendell really left. Ask her about Curtis. Or better yet, ask Curtis why he was living rent-free with my brother's wife." 10 seconds. That's all it took. The typing bubbles exploded. My cousin Janice replied first with a question mark. Then my aunt typed, "What?" Lorraine left the group chat within minutes. It was glorious. It was terrifying. It was real. And it was only the beginning. She showed up at the motel 2 days later. No warning. Just knocked twice, then stood there holding a Tupperware container like that was going to fix everything. I hadn't spoken to her since the group chat imploded. I figured she'd either go quiet or double down. Turns out, she was ready to perform. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, as if we were still us, as if I hadn't already watched her erase me from our life like a typo in her diary. I opened the door, but didn't say a word. She stepped in cautiously, her eyes darting around the cramped room, taking in the worn carpet, the untouched bed, the silence. She put the container on the dresser and said, "It's your favorite soup. From scratch." Like that mattered. Like soup could heal betrayal. I sat in the one chair near the window, and she stood across from me, arms folded tightly across her chest. "Mason overstepped," she began, her voice strained. "He made everything seem worse than it was." I actually laughed. Out loud. "Worse," I said. He toned it down. She flinched. Then the performance began. The tears. The breaking voice. The hand to her heart. "I made mistakes," she whispered. "But you shut me out for years, Wendell. You were married to your job. I was lonely." There it was. The classic shift. The justification wrapped in self-pity. I stared at her. "So instead of talking to me, you brought a stranger into our bed?" She didn't deny it. Not anymore. It wasn't like that at first. He was just someone who listened. He was unemployed. I snapped. Of course he listened. He had nothing else to do. That hit her. She paced. She tried to spin it into something poetic, emotional detachment, finding herself, reconnecting with her inner voice. But all I heard was, I wanted more and didn't care who paid the price. And then she said something that made my jaw clench so hard it hurt. Maybe I went too far, but I never thought you'd actually leave. I figured we'd fight, then move on. We always do. That was it. That was the problem. She thought I'd absorb it all again, like I had 1,000 times before. But this wasn't one of those times. I stood up, walked to the door, opened it wide, and said, "You should go. I'm not your fallback plan anymore." Her face froze. For the first time, she realized the script she'd rehearsed wasn't going to work. Not this time. The motel phone rang at 6:42 a.m. I didn't even know it worked until that moment. I let it ring twice before picking up, expecting some kind of front desk error or maybe a wrong number. But the voice on the other end was unmistakable. Smug. Slow. Barely awake. Wendell. Man, you gotta stop making her cry like this. It was Curtis. My hand tightened around the receiver. I didn't say anything. Not yet. He chuckled, clearly mistaking my silence for weakness. She came over last night, he went on. Real wreck, dude. You've seriously messed her up. You were the stable one, right? So act like it. He actually said that. Act like it. As if it was my job to be the emotional janitor after he lit the place on fire. Why are you calling me? I finally asked. He scoffed. Because she still wants you, man. I told her to just let it go. But she said she still thinks there's something worth saving. So, look, I figured we'd clear the air. Be men about it. I wish I could say I hung up right then, but I didn't. I listened. Because some twisted part of me wanted to hear how low this guy could go. And oh, he went low. He started giving relationship advice. Told me to take some time, work on myself, and not hold her slip over her head forever. A slip. He called it a slip. I was about to unload every ounce of rage I had stored for months when I heard something in the background. A voice. A female voice. Not Lorraine's. Younger. Playful. You coming back to bed or what? She said. And then, dead silence. Curtis didn't hang up. He just breathed heavily for a second and then whispered, "That wasn't. Look, man, that was just." I laughed. Full laugh. Not because it was funny, but because of course Curtis was already entertaining a backup plan while telling me how to fix my marriage. I said, "Tell Lorraine thanks for the soup. And tell your new friend I hope she's not allergic to betrayal." I hung up, and that was the first moment I realized something strange. I didn't feel sad anymore. Not numb. Not angry. Just free. Because it finally hit me. Curtis wasn't a rival. He was a mirror, reflecting everything Lorraine had become. Shallow. Impulsive. Temporary. It started with a screenshot. That's how Lorraine found out Curtis had already moved on. My cousin Janice. Yes, the same one from the family group chat. Sent it to me late one night. It was a story post from Curtis's new friend. Some girl named Lacey. Younger. Very into astrology. Very not Lorraine. The caption read, "He makes me feel like I'm the only woman in the world." Red heart. Curtis was tagged. And the photo? Him. Shirtless again. Same lazy smirk. Different kitchen. Not mine. I stared at it for a full minute, not out of jealousy, but awe. The audacity was Olympic level. This guy was eating my cereal a week ago. Now he was starring in someone else's love story before my side of the bed even cooled. I didn't send it to Lorraine, didn't have to. She saw it herself the next day, and I only know because she showed up again. No call. No warning. Just a bang on the motel door like she was the one who'd been wronged. When I opened it, I barely recognized her. Her hair was a mess, makeup smudged, and there was this wild, desperate look in her eyes I'd never seen before, not even during our worst arguments. She stormed in without asking, waving her phone like a weapon. "Did you know?" she shouted. "Did you know he was seeing someone else?" I stayed calm. "Lorraine, that's not my problem anymore." She dropped onto the edge of the bed, hands trembling. "He told me he loved me, that we were finally free to be together." Her voice cracked. "And now he's just posting pictures with some random girl?" I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. She looked up at me, tears now rolling, not the manipulative kind. Real, raw ones. "You were always the one who stayed. Even when I didn't deserve it. You stayed." I nodded slowly. And that was the problem. She covered her face with both hands. I messed everything up, didn't I? I didn't respond. Maybe because I didn't want to kick her while she was down, or maybe because I finally didn't care if she understood or not. Her world had cracked open, and for once, it wasn't because I failed to hold it together. It was because she chose someone who never intended to stay. And for the first time in months, I wasn't the one unraveling. She was, and I was already thinking about what comes next. She came to say goodbye, though she didn't realize that's what it was. A week had passed since the Curtis fallout, and Lorraine returned to the motel one last time. But this time she didn't come screaming. No makeup, no performance, just quiet eyes and a small, shaky smile. She sat down slowly, as if testing whether she still had any power in the room. She didn't. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a while," she said. "I think I need help figuring out who I am when I'm not ruining people's lives." For once, I didn't detect sarcasm or defensiveness. Just a woman stripped of illusions. I nodded. "That sounds like a good idea." She looked down at her hands. "I don't expect forgiveness, Wendell, but I hope one day you won't hate me." I didn't say I hated her. I didn't. Not anymore. That was the most surprising part. I felt nothing sharp. No bitterness. No ache. Just release. When she left, she didn't try to hug me. She just turned and walked out, for real this time. I watched her through the window until she disappeared behind a corner. And then I started packing. Not because I wanted to run from the past, but because, for the first time in years, I had no reason to stay stuck. 2 months later, I moved into a small place by the lake. Got a job at a local nonprofit. I started drawing again, something I gave up years ago when I got too busy being stable. Mason helped me build a new desk. Janice sends memes almost daily. I still keep the resignation letter. Not because I need the reminder of how things ended, but because it marked the beginning of everything that followed. And sometimes, when the morning light hits the water just right, I feel something I thought I'd never feel again. Peace. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not embarrassed. And I'm definitely not broken. I'm free. And finally, I'm me.